Welcome to Lesson 16. Before we dive into this part, I want to take a look back at what we have done in the last two lessons. In Lessons 14 and 15, we used the Loft command. Let's hide that shell feature. If you recall, we used the Loft command to take two sketches, two shapes, and create a solid between them. We went between two circles. In the first example part, we went between a circle and a square. In this second part, square had rounded off corners, and we see how that connected smoothly from the rounded corners of that square, and then turns into a smooth circle on this end. A couple more parts that we did in Lesson 14. See here we added a third sketch, so we have three sketches that the Loft feature joined with a nice smooth continuous curve right here. Lesson 15, we added a little bit more control by using rails in our Loft, adding a sketch that controlled the curvature of that loft from end to end. And then in Lesson 15, we had two separate sketches that had rails in them. This one to control the sides of the shape, and then this one to control kind of the belly of that boat underneath. In Lesson 16, we're going to continue with Loft. We're going to, though, instead of creating solids as we did in Lessons 14 and 15, we're going to show you how you can cut through a solid. We've done this with Revolve, we've done this with Sweep, we've done this with Extrude. All of these features will allow you to create a solid part, or it will allow you to cut through an existing solid. Let's begin this one with a 2-point center rectangle. Drag it out here. Say OK. Let's add dimensions to that. Make it 5 inches wide, 4 inches tall. Finish that sketch, and we will make it 3/4 of an inch thick. Just to throw in some of the features that we have used before, we'll put fillets on the corners of this. Make those 0.5. Fillet those corners. It's good to keep using some of the skills that we've learned already, just to keep them fresh in your mind. Now we will create a new sketch on the front of this part. Let's put a couple of circles up here. It doesn't matter exactly where they are, but we'll throw on two circles. This is going to end up looking something like maybe a carburetor adapter plate. If you're familiar with what that would look like, it's got holes on one side that join with holes on the other side and create a tunnel through the part that will align holes that are in two separate locations. Let's make these equal to each other, so that's symmetrical. We'll use the horizontal constraint to make sure those two circles stay aligned with each other, and we will put them, so we have a dimension off the origin, make that 0.375. Circles need a diameter. Make these 1.5 inches. Use an equal constraint to make these two circles equal to each other. Say OK, and finish that sketch. Now we need another sketch on the other side of the part. I'm going to spin around and look at the back side. Let's create a new sketch here. We're going to make two more circles. Let's make these a little closer to center and a little smaller. Let's make these, where the other side was 1.5 inches, we'll make these 1.25. 1.25 equals constraint to make them equal to each other. Another horizontal constraint to make sure they stay aligned with each other. Another dimension off the origin. We can see up at the top our previous dimension off the origin to the left was 1.25. Let's make this one 1 inch. We'll add another one that will be equal to that 1 inch. And now we just need a dimension up from the origin. All right, that is our one dimension that is remaining that we need. Where we can see the other side was 0.375, where that shows through, we'll make this one 0.250. Now finish this sketch. We will spin the part around and see we have circles on both sides. Now this time with our loft, as we said, instead of creating geometry, we're going to cut. So that means we need to select the cut option here. Click our first sketch and then get those profiles. Hold down F4, spin around to the other side. I want to add another sketch. Go up here into the Loft dialog box, add another sketch. We click on that sketch, click its two profiles, and we see we have all of our sketch profiles highlighted. We are cutting. We don't need rails with this one. We want it to just go directly from one profile to the other. And we say, okay, loft feature has failed. What is wrong with my loft? Loft could not build this loft. Multiple disjoint loops found in the profile section. Okay, you know what that tells me? That tells me that I can only do one at a time. Let's back up out of here. Let's cancel that. Let's use Loft. We'll get this profile. Add a sketch. Flip it around. That sketch. That circle. Cut between them. And that worked. Okay. We just learned a lesson, one at a time. Now, I want to create another loft. A couple of things I could do. I can share this sketch. Share that sketch. And loft again. That one. Close profile. Flip around. That. Oops. Add sketch. Click the circle. Click inside. Get that profile. Oh, we did not. Let's look at what it said there. Failed to create that loft feature. There's warnings. You click all the way down through this and you can see what went wrong. The feature as specified did not change the number of faces. Let's go back and see what happened. I was still telling it to join or to create new material. All I want to do is click here. Now it is cutting. And I say okay. See, these sketches are still visible. So let's go back in, right click on those and turn off visibility. Now we have both holes all the way through the part. We can see the taper from one side to the other, the change in location as it transitions from one side of the part to the other. To give, if this were a carburetor adapter, to give it a path for the air-fuel mixture to flow through. Now let's do one more thing just to reinforce some of the old things that we've done before. Let's draw a rectangle on the face of this part. I want to put some holes in. But let's use a rectangle, make it construction geometry. That 2-point center rectangle, start in the center, move out to about where those need to be. Let's add a dimension here of a 1/2 inch, add a dimension here of a 1/2 inch, and then we can use this rectangle to create our 4 points that will be 4 mounting holes for this. Finish sketch, create a hole through here. Let's make it a clearance hole for a socket head cap screw, 5/16 through all. That's a 332 diameter, and say okay. Good enough for that one. Let's call this part done. We will save it as lesson 16A. And I want to go ahead and make another part. Now that we've worked through that one, let's start a new part and just play a little bit. You can watch this one. Don't worry so much about trying to follow along with this one. It's just going to be, we'll call it freestyle. Go through and just draw a little bit and see what happens. Let's make a rectangle. That's 5 by 5. Say okay. Finish that 2D sketch and let's extrude that one out 6 inches. That gives us a nice big chunk to work with. And everything that we have done before in all of these loft demonstrations, we have been working and drawing our loft between two planes that were parallel to each other. In this case, it was our XY plane first, and then a work plane that we created off of it. In our first example here in lesson 16, we used two opposite sides of the part that are just planes that are parallel to each other. But it doesn't have to be that. Let's sketch on the front face of the part. Make a new sketch here. I'm going to throw a circle on the front. Let's give it some dimensions so it is fully constrained. None of this really matters. This isn't anything real. Just demonstrating some features. So we are all black. Everything is fully constrained. Now we can finish our sketch, and let's make another sketch on this face. We could have gone all the way down to the other end of the part and cut through, but let's see what happens when we put a rectangle. Let's draw something here. Dimension it off the edge of the part, 1/2 inch there, 1/2 inch there, and let's make this be a 2-inch square. Say OK, finish that sketch. Now we have sketches drawn on faces of a part that are 90 degrees away from each other. Let's put a loft between them. There's our first profile. Picks up our second profile. You can see the preview that it gives there. Be sure that we cut or it will give us an error message, and we say OK. So there we have an odd-shaped tunnel through the part at an angle, transitions from a circle on one end to a square on the other end. Is this actual example particularly useful? Not necessarily, but it demonstrates the things that Loft is capable of. So take this, play with Loft. Just create a block, create different shapes, draw on faces, just see how it behaves. Just practice this over and over again with all of these skills. The more you just go through and draw something, it doesn't matter what it is. I don't know what this block is. It doesn't mean anything. But just seeing how the commands behave, see what happens with the different kinds of shapes, see what goes wrong. We go back to here, and if we had clicked join as before, as we did in the first example, it's going to give an error message because we aren't cutting, we aren't creating any new material. Most of the time, these error messages will tell you something. You dig down all the way to the bottom, it will tell you what went wrong. Sometimes you get mysterious messages that don't give you any information really. But for the most part, these error messages are useful. So go in and read, see what happened, see what went wrong. Sometimes in these demonstrations, we're going to go through step by step and make sure everything works. But as you saw in the first example, sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes you need to go back, read the error message, change your inputs, go here to cut instead of join, and we get the result that we want. Carry on with that, practice a little bit, and we will see you in lesson 17.